Hello and welcome everyone to the evaluation of my third playtest playthrough of my Memoir 44 scenario called Force versus Finesse on the Battle of Dubno-Brody. As you can see, it was once again a German win, and besides achieving these victory conditions, which they actually achieved first, they would have also achieved a sudden death condition, but again they reached 24 victory points before achieving the sudden death condition of controlling Lutsk, Dubno, and Brody all at the start of their turn, which they did. So they would have won that way too. So as I said, some changes I made after the last playtest playthrough was to allow the Russians to build a pontoon bridge as well. This one was actually built by the Germans. I'll come back to that. The Russians at a certain moment had the upper hand on the left-hand side of the right board, and they could have pushed on, but they didn't have an attack card at that moment. Had they had one, the Germans were much weaker at the time. That's also because for the last 3 or 4 turns, the Russians only got to roll 4 dice for reinforcements rather than 7. Because of the scenario special rule, they were no longer in possession of the majority of town hexes, so they were only entitled to rolling 4 reinforcement dice, which, obviously didn't yield them much. I believe nothing, in fact. But at a certain time, they had an attack card. Well, they didn't have an attack card here, but they actually had quite a few units here. But they weren't able to cross. Had they been able to cross at that moment, they literally would have been able to take the fight to the Germans. And at that time, they were still quite ahead by quite a margin, because they controlled the majority of town hexes by far. They had killed, well, several German units as well. So had they been able to cross here and engage 3 or 4 weak German units, well, who knows? The scenario might have ended differently. Well, as I said, the Germans constructed a bridge here, and that did achieve what I hoped it would achieve, that the fight would also take place on the other side of the river, which it definitely did. You can see a German tank unit here, which, had the game lasted a few more turns, probably would have been driven out again. So that's actually the one thing I've been tinkering with still, but for now I'll leave it the way it is perhaps to prolong the scenario to 28 or 30 medals. So you still get a counterattack and everything. But on the other hand, 24 seems fine. The Russians do have a window of opportunity during which they could steal a win. I think it hasn't happened yet, but it certainly felt like it. As I just explained, there were times during the game that the Russians could have done more. And the most important thing, as I said, you can see a German tank unit over here as well. The fight has been taken to, the Russian baseline side of the board, so to speak. So it's not just the two forces not being able to cross the river anywhere. The Germans apparently didn't even need a pontoon bridge. They would have wanted to build one here as well, but they never got that particular card. So the next playthrough I'm going to do, and that's going to be the last one, apart from a session I've got planned in 2 weeks or so with a friend, in which I'll actually play it with an opponent then. But the Germans never had a card. They never had an attack on this side, which is what is needed to construct a pontoon bridge. And in this particular scenario, an added condition is that they have a unit adjacent to the spot where they actually want to build a bridge, which they would have had, on numerous occasions, so that really wasn't the problem, but they simply didn't have a card. They did have an attack on the other side. Again, imagine the Germans sitting on the other side of the table, so it's like a mirror image. This particular one they've had for a long time, but as I play tested the previous time, this is not really the place where you want to build a bridge, because it's easily defensible terrain by the Russians, and it just takes a while to get out of that wooded, marshy area over there. So for now, I'll leave the scenario the way it is. I'll play test it once more, but I'm not going to make any additional changes for the time being. Again, well, what I might try is what would happen if I went on for until 28 victory points or something like that. But it seems pretty obvious that sooner or later, well, here it actually would have been The outcome would have been in the balance over here. The Russians, had they not lost the three important town hexes of Dubno, Brody, and Lutsk, they probably would have been able to push the Germans back again, and you would have had another fight between these German units over here and these Russian units over here. So yeah, that's an option, but I might try that depending on how it goes, and see if anything would change if I continue the fight for a couple of more victory points. But for now, I think I'll leave it the way it is. 24 victory points, sudden death conditions stay in place, and yeah, this was, I think, the most enjoyable playtest so far, because the board indeed got more dynamic with the addition of the pontoon bridges and having the fight all over the board and not just on one half of it. So thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and see you on the next one.